Chicago Backstage, and a special look at the sensational new musical Kinky Boots before it ever gets to Broadway. It's here in Chicago. Welcome, everybody.
Well, Kinky Boots was first brought to me by Daryl Roth, our producer. She had acquired the rights, and she asked me if I'd like to direct the show. And she says that she had you in mind, but I think I had you in mind. I actually said, yes, let's get Harvey. He's got to write the book. And I go to Harvey often for a lot of things, and he usually says no, but this time he said yes.
Well, yeah, you actually went to Harvey for Legally Blonde, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. But we both loved this story. We loved the father-son thing. We loved a lot of messages. I'll let Harvey talk to you about it. But it just is a very, very special show. And then it was your brother who suggested Cindy.
Yeah,
take it from there.
Well, they sort of had this idea they wanted to audition different people to write the songs and all that, which seems very strange to me because they asked me to please write 2 scenes that they could give to writing teams, and it's like, that's not how you work. You don't work alone. This is a communal theater, a musical. It's all of our minds together. If we don't all understand each other, you don't get the kind of magic that we want. Anyway, so we did that, and when they finally said it wasn't going to happen, I said, Cindy. And I had known Cindy for many years, and I'd also seen her. We talked about writing something together. I'd seen her do Threepenny Opera. I knew she had this great love of Rodgers and Hammerstein. I said, come on. She loved Jerry.
We'd worked together. I'd choreographed for her, and we'd worked together, and we had a great relationship. And she'd been in Broadway Bears for me. And
but here's my question, which is, how restrictive did you find the film script to be on the work you wanted to do here?
We watch the film once and you throw it out. The stage is different than a film. You can't do what's in a film on stage, and often when it's a close-up, it usually is the first clue that it should be a song, because it's an emotional moment on film that can't be repeated on stage, and usually those most emotional moments end up turning into songs or monologues where the character's telling you something about how they're feeling or what they want. It's pretty easy, really.
Billy, let me come to you. From what I read, and in talking to Cindy, apparently Harvey felt he was Lola, Jerry felt he was Lola, Cindy decided she was Lola, but you are Lola. And so that sort of puts a high level of expectation on you, knowing that everybody involved really is relating to this character. So talk to me about this very strong, opinionated character on the outside, but what is Lola like on the inside as well?
I feel like Lola is an outsider, and she has found the courage to live inside of her own truth very early on, no matter what anybody thinks. And you know, that's really, really difficult to do when everything around you says that you should be something different, you know, and to have the courage to say, well, actually, I'm this, and I'm just going to live like that, is really powerful to me. And so I feel very attracted to her because that's how I've tried to live my life. So that's pretty much the gist of it, and that's why I feel like I'm very close to Lola. You know, as an African-American, gay, Christian man in this world, you know, it takes a lot of courage to say, this is what it is, and you can take me or leave me. So.
Now, Stark, your character, Charlie Price, has never met a drag queen before Lola, though you in your career seem to only work with drag queens as you go on. Charles Die Mommy Die, Charles Bush, and some of that. So talk to me about, you know, if Lola is about living your own truth and being true to yourself, talk to me about Charlie and what his message is.
I think Charlie is about finding his truth and looking for it. You know, he grew up in a family that is a generational factory. You know, it's expected that you're going to take over for Dad when he's gone. And this is a guy who he doesn't know what he wants to do, but he thinks that this isn't it. It's not this, but it's something, and he really wants to go find out what it is. It's so wonderful to play that, and these guys have done such an incredible job of putting that together. I, as a, in my real life, I knew what I wanted to do when I was a kid, and I was allowed to go for it with nothing but support. But they've created this story, and Harvey's written this book, and Sydney's written these songs, that just all I have to do is take this imaginary circumstance and make it real, and it works.
Never put much heart in anything before. You strut into my life and help me go for something more. Now I stand up for myself. Now I stand out from the crowd. Now I'm standing on high heels. If Dad could see me now. Need the fire to take you higher. We'll light you up like a live wire. Celebrate you to elevate you when you struggle to stand. We'll take a helping hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your half-hour. Stand-by flies. Welcome to the auditorium theater. Stand-by flies. Actors are in makeup and wardrobe. Places at 15. Places, everyone.
I want to dispel something with you guys. I mean, there's some people who, when there might be some husbands out there who hear Billy Elliot's coming, I heard it's this ballet show. I'm not going to a ballet show or a dance show. So for the, perhaps some of the guys in the audience or whatever, that really kind of misses the point, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, of course it's about a little boy who wants to be a ballet dancer, but of course it's much more than that. It's about a community that's under threat. It's a community of miners in the northeast of England that were going through this incredible struggle in the 80s, where the government was trying to shut down all the mining in the country to get rid of the union. And the power of the unions. And it's about one little village and the story of these men, the miners in that village, and one of the miners happens to be a dad who's lost his wife, and they've got this little cuckoo, this little boy, who becomes, for the whole community, a little phoenix, as indeed the strike sort of collapses in on this community. What I love about the show, I mean, one of the things I'm most proud about the show, actually, is how many dads love it. It's a show for dads, and dads and their kids, and watching those men who come to the show and really try and go through the emotions that they go through, I think is one of the thrilling things.
And it's true. In this show, by the way, Tommy, Dad's a man's man in this show, right? Yeah. Your brother, Tony, is a man's man in this show. But, Billy is too. I mean, he has a talk to me about what guides Billy, what his motivation is in
he's obsessed with dancing, and he has this will to do it, and he wants to do it really bad.
Well, what is your life like? I mean, you're not having the normal life of a kid, I don't think, right? You're not in school from 9 to 3. I mean, but I know you have your education. So can you tell us about, what is the day of Tommy Batchelor in playing Billy?
Well, we wake up and we go to work.
What time is that?
We have tutoring usually starts at 12 o'clock. So that's usually the beginning of our day.
Starting the day at noon?
Mm-hmm.
That's rough.
Wait, sometimes it starts at 9. Sometimes it starts really
Yeah,
early.
we've, every once in a while we'll have like 10 o'clock ballet classes.
Okay. Yeah. Can I audition for this? I wouldn't mind. I would like that. No, I'm sorry.
But it goes on, doesn't it? Because
yeah,
you do tutoring, then you do
we have tutoring, and then we have sometimes ballet classes or acrobatics. And then we also have, because we fly in the show, so we have flying rehearsals.
Now, when you say fly, just so our audience understands what...
Oh, yeah, it's on a wire. We don't actually fly.
Don't get the camera.
We lost 2 Billies that way.
Yeah, flew away. And then sometimes we have a show at night, and then we go home.
But what's interesting is how much maintenance you have to do. I mean, how much... Because people think that, we're just doing a show and then you'll have 2 days off or something. But it's not like that at all, is it?
Every day there's rehearsals.
Every day there's rehearsals.
And but are there understudies separate from the 4 Billies, so that if a Billy is sick or something like that, is it one of the other ones, or are there also understudies?
Well, everybody looks after all the 4 Billies will look after each other in a sense, and it's usually injuries. I mean, inevitably, because there's so much dance in the show. There are injuries, aren't there? I mean, Tommy, you were injured for a bit, didn't you?
Yeah, in New York, I had an injury before previews, and then the other Billies had to go on.
And how long would that take you out for? That took you out for some time, didn't it?
A few months.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty frightening, isn't it, when that happens?
What is your, and by the way, I'm going to point out a member of our audience because your mom is here, and I want folks to be able to see her because, I mean, everything you're saying, the concerns and the injury and all that, obviously you need very supportive folks, people who are right behind you, and I'm guessing she is, so let's just give a hello to Becky. Becky over there. Becky Batchelor. So having a supportive mom, pretty important, huh?
Yeah, it helps, like, she keeps me going, like, if I ever have any hard times, she comforts me. And, yeah.
Important.
It is amazing. You know, I mean, it's amazing how many times we have to change a Billy mid-show. You know.
You mean during a performance?
Yeah, because it's such a demanding role, and you know, you only have to hit a leg or damage a knee or twist a knee. And I was amazed the first time we did it in the UK because we had a British Chinese lad who was playing Billy, and you know, we literally one. You know, Caucasian Billy went off this way, the Chinese British Billy came in, nobody blinked, nobody said a thing, and I thought, God, that's amazing. You'd never get away with that on film. You know, and there's something about the whole suspension that allows you to do that thing. The most we've done it is twice in one night, where we've exchanged one Billy for another Billy, and then he's done something, we've had to change him again. Yeah, and that for these guys is, you know, slightly insane, because it also means for the orchestra that they'll probably have to, you know, dig around for that other score.
Yeah.
You know, because
songs are done in different keys.
Yeah, they all sing in different keys, unfortunately, and it changes. It doesn't stay still. It's a constantly moving thing. You know, the permutations that this show has are huge, and it all comes from the kids.
Well, see, if there was a line in the show where Mrs. Wilkins says, "Billy, you've changed so much.
Yeah.
And you're Chinese now. I don't know how this happened." Well, guys, this show is performing all over the world. I mean, in North America, in Australia, in Japan, in Germany, Amsterdam, all over. You're back now, but in Chicago, it played over 1,000 performances over 3.5 years. Box office over $210 million. I'm not going to ask if you each got an equal share of that, but I do want to start by asking you, Jackie. Little girls are often afraid of witches, but this witch, well, now people kind of want to be her, don't you think?
I don't think they'd want to be here if they got painted green every day.
Ah, okay.
They wouldn't like those green zits.
The truth is, Elphaba is actually a pretty nice person.
Yes, no, Elphaba is I find, is a sweetheart and has the biggest heart out of any character I've ever played or read. Or, I mean, she has the purest intentions. She just has by far and away the worst luck I think any person has ever had.
In fact, she's beautifully tragic, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as she described. Gene, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, let me ask you to give us the story of Wicked.
It's the story of all those witches from Oz from about the point when they're in their mid-teenage years, say college years, when they first meet. The two of them, of course, are sisters. Up until Dorothy arrives in Oz. And they have quite a number of thrilling and exciting and amusing adventures.
And they do. And Barbara, you know, of course, this is the story before Dorothy got to Oz, but those who are true fans of The Wizard of Oz, and so many people are, they're not disappointed in this show. That story is part of it.
Definitely. It has its roots, just like all of us have our roots in our own pasts. Gregory Maguire kind of said, what happened to these women to bring them to this point? And then Winnie Holtzman and put together, with Stephen Schwartz, put together this amazing musical about, well, the untold story.
And of course,
but really, what makes all of us who we are our past experiences, or doesn't necessarily define us, but brings us to where we are in the present. And so it kind of explores the backstory of some people that we know through legend.
And the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Lion, they're all here, right? We get them all. They show up. Paul, you know, your character is really interesting because Dr. Dilliman, you talk about him, he's a faculty member there. But, you know, if you start looking at the message of Wicked and going to a deeper level, in my opinion, that kind of begins with you and your character.
Of course, every show I'm in, I always know that I am the central character, no matter how many lines I have. But yeah, I do believe that, well, of course, it is the story of Elphaba and what she goes through. And one of the things she discovers when she comes to Shiz University is that something's going on in Oz with the animals who were perhaps once equal citizens and now are lesser citizens. And as the play goes on, you know, become even more lesser. That's why I'm a professor in this show. And so, yeah, I think the scene in which she meets Dr. Dilliman and learns his story is critical to her. It's all theater is storytelling. All of us actors are telling one big story, and we each have to figure out what our part of that story is. And it's nice for me every night to know that for the audience to understand the rest of the show, it's critical that my part is clear, and I get to play a goat.
And can you give us a little goat sound while we're doing it? Oh, there we go. Okay, that's it. Here we go. And welcome everybody to Broadway in Chicago Backstage with a look at the newly revised musical Working, based on the book by Studs Terkel. This show has been called the Working Man's Chorus Line, which makes sense. It takes us from an American workday, from the Monday morning blues to the second shift blahs, as I heard it described, with workers from every aspect. It's going to be amazing. One should never use the word living legends lightly at all, and I don't use it lightly. In fact, it probably doesn't say enough about my next guest, who started his career by writing a show called Godspell, followed up with Pippin and the Magic Show, and then maybe just this little show, this one of the biggest shows ever around the world, called Wicked. He co-adapted Working. His film credits include Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Prince of Egypt, and Enchanted. A book about his life called Defying Gravity, the creative career of Stephen Schwartz from Godspell to Wicked. We're going to focus it on Working, but I love Godspell, Pippin, Corner of the Sky, classic stuff. But what I want to ask you about, your later work, Wicked, and even Working now in the revision, seems to me deeper, more sophisticated. Am I reading that right?
I don't know, you live and learn, I guess, and I just write about and deal with the things that are of interest and concern to me. And I guess as my appreciation of the world gets maybe more nuanced, then that comes into the work as well.
One last question before we get into Working itself. I mean, you share this era. Your name is said right along with Stephen Sondheim and Kander Ebb and Andrew Lloyd Webber, these great people. Can you talk a little bit about how musical theater exists today as opposed to when you even began 30, 40 years ago?
Well, I think, we're still trying to do the same thing, which is basically tell stories and talk about the things that we care about and use the vehicle of music and theater to do that. Obviously it's gotten a lot more expensive to do things, and that makes things more challenging. But, for me, the basic goal has always been tell a good story.
And welcome back to Broadway in Chicago Backstage, a look at the newly revised musical Working, playing at the Broadway Playhouse at Water Tower Theater. This is going to be a very special treat because you're going to have some performances by the cast of this show. They've only been in rehearsal for a few days, so we're getting a look at Working while it's working. But we're going to start off with a very special treat, and that is a performance by the creator of all of the music, or most of the music in this show, and Stephen Schwartz. The song you're going to be performing, Gene Wigan already said, is one of the most beautiful ballads we've heard, called Fathers and Sons. My question as I toss to you is, this is a song that almost didn't make it in the show. It's very personal to you. I know there's sort of 4 generations of Schwartzes that triggered this as a song for you, but give us a little bit about the birth and use of Fathers and Sons, and then please welcome Stephen Schwartz, Fathers and Sons.
Thanks. Well, as you've heard, so many of the people who spoke to Studs and who figure in the show spoke about how important not just their jobs were, but what they could give to the generations that followed, their children. The steel worker who sings the song in the show said that. Ife mentioned the cleaning woman, and on and on. So this was an important theme, but when I wrote the song, I snuck in some stuff about my own life. And that felt like cheating a little bit to me, so at first I wasn't going to put it in the show, but then the cast kind of browbeat me into it, and but it really does spring from what the people that Studs spoke to actually said. So this is the song Fathers and Sons, which is sung in the show by the steelworker. Heard a lot of songs say, "Where you going, my son?" Now I know they're true. Boy, you never stop to think how fast the years run. Now they're taking you. I remember you was 3 1/2. You and me, we'd sit there after things got quieted. We'd laugh at some new word you said, how tough you were to get to bed, and we'd plan the night away, planning for our kid. I was your hero then. Couldn't do no wrong as far as you were concerned. You thought I was the best of men. The tables hadn't turned, you hadn't learned how little time it takes, and daddies make mistakes. Seems to me that lately I've been thinking a lot. I think about my dad. Lots of funny things come back I thought I'd forgot. Now they make me sad. High school and it used to be. I didn't want him touching me and I shuddered if he did. Further back to summer nights, baseball games beneath the lights, and sleeping in the car, my daddy and his kid. He was my hero then. He couldn't do no wrong as far as I was concerned. I thought he was the bravest and the strongest and the best of men. The tables hadn't turned, I hadn't learned how little time it takes. And everybody breaks, and daddies make mistakes. Heard a lot of songs say, where you going, my son? Now I know they're for real. Boy, you never stop to think how fast the years run, and the things they steal. Now it seems I always knew why I do the things I do, and the things I never did. Why I work my whole damn life, since I could give a better life than the one my dad could give me. I give it to my kid.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Schwartz.
It's not easy being green, well, unless, of course, you're an ogre named Shrek, who has just landed at the Cadillac Palace Theater in Chicago for the kickoff of an exclusive national tour. And welcome to Broadway in Chicago Backstage. I'm your host, Paul Lisnek. We're going to be taking an in-depth look at Shrek the Musical. Janine, I want to start with you because, look, sorry about that. A lot of shows that began on the screen, and a lot of Disney shows, Lion King, Little Mermaid, the music was there, right? And they transferred it over to the stage, but with music intact, favorite songs. You had a different challenge. Shrek is a phenomenal Oscar-winning movie, but it didn't have the music. How did you approach writing the music for the show?
Braced for failure, as I approach everything. It's a joke. That was a joke. The difference between, and Alan's done a lot of those musicals, when we call them book musicals, and the Disney animation, which has a huge and rich history with Walt Disney going back he's literally the man who invented it. Those are narrative pieces so that the characters actually sing to each other. So when they come with particularly Alan Menken's scores, they come in intact. The difference between Shrek was what we call a drop the needle score, which is basically there's a VO score, a voiced over. So this beautiful, beautiful and rich tapestry of music, but the characters don't actually sing to each other. So that was the difference.
And let's talk about the story. Haven, you are Princess Fiona. You're not the only character that plays it, because we get Fiona at different stages of her life.
Yes.
In fact, it leads to a beautiful ballad, actually, that the three Fiona sing together in the show. But talk to me about the plot of Shrek. We've seen the movies, and much of it kind of transfers over in some ways. Tell us about Shrek.
The whole thing?
Well, you know, the fact that it's a story about people getting banished from their homeland, your search for true love, that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, the musical, I think, is lovely because it really focuses on a lot of things that the movie doesn't have the opportunity to focus on, like the fairy tale creatures. So it starts with Shrek. In the musical, we see him as a 7-year-old ogre who's been banished from his home by his parents, lovingly of course, and told to go and make a life for himself. And then he comes across villagers and is taught by his parents how he needs to behave in the world in order to survive. And we see him later in the swamp, grown up and comfortable in his life, and then a bunch of fairy tale creatures are dumped on his swamp because they've been banished from the kingdom of Duloc by a little Lord Farquaad. So then we meet...
And you do mean little.
Oh, yes. Tiny, tiny Lord Farquaad. Yeah. So Shrek, in order to get his swamp back, agrees to go and talk to this Lord Farquaad. And along the way, he meets Don Quixote. And they become friends, kind of.
And hilarity ensues. In
Yes.
fact, Alan, let me talk to you about the role of Donkey. I just crack up. One of the lines you say early on in the show is you're like a GPS with fur, and and we still get that classic description, the noble steed.
Yes.
Tell us about Donkey, and really, I mean, he's just all goodness, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he says what he feels. It's right there on the cuff. I think he's the most intelligent character on the stage. But he's like that best friend you never knew you needed. And all he wants is a friend. And so he finds Shrek, and he takes no judgment from it. He looks at Shrek, and he's just, I want to be your friend. An instant friendship. Now, I do get myself in trouble a lot, but I think everyone loves Donkey, so he can get away with a lot of things. There one point where I call, Fiona ugly. Who gets to say that and still get love, you know?
Yeah. Freak Flag is probably the most frequently asked about song in the show for me. When I went on Broadway, I was Gingy, so it was close to my heart anyway, but people love the song. And afterwards, people love to talk about it and love to tell you how much they loved it and what it meant to them. And Freak Flag for me in this show is similar to what my experience was with Rent. That's what I appreciate about Freak Flag.
And Alan, Donkey aside, I mean, how does Alan Mingo feel about that song?
Well, I think almost Freak Flag takes on the essence of the whole show. It's about, I mean, it's really like the theme song that's really underlining the whole play, about being who you are. Don't care what everyone else thinks. Be who you are, and like Janine was saying, the best that you can be.
I've got my own little patch of the world. It's not a big, bright, beautiful world, but it's mine.
And now I sit with Shrek himself, Eric Peterson. Good to see you.
How are you, Paul?
I'm good, and I'm in Shrek green, by the way.
Yes, I appreciate that.
I'm all ready for you, ring and everything. We're all Shrek. Before I get to the show, let me take you to July 15th, 5:12 p.m. Your life changed forever.
It did. It was my daughter, Sophia Marie Peterson, was born at that moment.
I have to just ask you, I know the name is Sophia, it's beautiful. Did you think of naming her Fiona?
I will say, because as soon as we found out that we were pregnant and, we knew that Shrek was happening, we did have one or two conversations where we were like, I mean, it's a pretty name. We could maybe do that. But then eventually we figured that'd be a little overkill.
All right, let's get to the character of Shrek. First of all, getting ready for this.
Yes.
I understand it takes you a couple of hours every night. Talk to me about the fun
of the makeup and 45 pounds of costume.
Yeah, so my call time for the show is 2 hours prior to curtain time, which normally it's a half hour for most actors. So I get there extra early. The makeup takes about an hour and a half, hour 45, and that's just essentially from the shoulders up. That's all you're working on.
Talk to me about Shrek, because he's a complex character. And
Definitely.
for me, a very powerful line that Shrek has is when he says, I don't have a problem. The world has a problem with me.
That's another one of those things that I think is so great in the musical, that of those layers that you get to see that you didn't see in the movie. And it is one of those human qualities that he's saying, listen, I was sent away. I think Shrek up to age 7 was probably, and you see a little glimmer of that in the show, that he wanted to be friends with people and he wanted to be like, hey, how you doing? I'm Shrek. I'm an ogre and you're a human, but that's cool, you know? But once he learned that the world was not going to accept that and his parents said that's not how it is, he started to build that wall and started to seclude himself. So I think it's just showing that he's more, it's not that he's scared of everyone. He's more just kind of hurt and he's okay pushing everybody away.
And so let me just start. Emily, you play the beautiful Belle. First of all, stepping into this, lots of famous people as well have been in this role and been in your footsteps before. What's it like playing the role of Belle? And tell us about that character.
It's amazing. It's an honor every night. Belle is feisty. She's not the typical, stereotypical Disney princess, which I really appreciate about her. And really, in Disney's princesses and their films, she was the first brown-eyed brunette princess in all of the films that they did. It's an honor every night to play someone who is so selfless and compassionate and saves the beast and saves her father and really saves everyone in the castle.
The whole world, actually.
The whole world. I conquer it. No.
This is very good. Dane, of course, I want you to talk about the role of the Beast, but, you know, there are people who don't know the story of the Beauty and the Beast beyond its, you know, just essence of the title. So in describing your role and how you became a Beast, give us a bit of the story of Beauty and the Beast.
Well, it starts off with the prologue, just like the movie, and how it has the backstory. And there's a prince who lives in a castle, and he's a spoiled and selfish prince. And then a old beggar woman comes to the house to seek shelter from the storm, and he doesn't like what he sees, and because she's haggard and unattractive, not like this one here.
Not like all of you, any of you.
Not like all of us. And so he turns her away, and she warns him not to do that, and then when he does again, she reveals herself to be a beautiful enchantress. And then the whole story about not judging people by their outward appearance comes into play. And then she turns him into exactly what he didn't like in her.
The ugly beast.
The ugly beast.
But there is a way out for him.
There is a way out. If he finds someone to love him and if he loves her back. And that is where Belle comes in.
And we won't ruin the plot for those who may not know how it... It's Disney, so everybody dies at the end. No, I'm kidding. That's not what it is. Happily ever after, always at Disney.